I am so conservative.
Rationalized in my head. These are things I read in
And
the
I'm going to talk about Willow Creek.
Okay.
Willow Creek, a few years back, had
remembered
invited...
at the time when Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized religion. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah. I am so conservative. If you didn't jump to conclusions, you might not get any exercise. I am so conservative. And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. Today is January 25, 2022, and this is broadcast number 275. This is just a bit of a trigger warning for those who believe words are more injurious than sticks and stones. I really am so conservative, I can't turn left even when I'm driving.
Did you say this is just a bigot of a trigger warning?
It's a bigot of a trigger warning. That's right.
That's what I thought you said.
It's a bigot giving a trigger warning. How about that? I can't turn left even when I'm driving. In addition to giving trigger warnings to our viewers, Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection.
Yeah.
Today, Carl Teichrib joins us to talk about convergence, government, religion, and money. The money, which is the love of money, is the root of all evil, but money itself is not. My name is Don Mino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. And our senior researcher is Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast, having already corrected me on my pronunciation of words.
I just couldn't let that fly by.
Yeah, well, you could have. You just chose not to. And here is Ronnie, baby.
Ronnie, baby. Yes, greetings from sunny Florida. Carl is here now. Hello there. Greetings from sunny Florida, where the palm trees came out, saw their shadows, and now we have 12 more months of summer. And speaking of palm trees, our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is Carbona Grande Resorts and Spas, the investment opportunity of a lifetime. And a regular legal disclaimer, our guest singular on today's webcast, I'm going to insert name here, that would be Carl Teichrib, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast, hereafter known as the webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. This satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, spot remarks, or anything else that might fall into the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no liability for or responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content. Our regular notices, beginning with the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too. If you really enjoy it, or if you want to inflict it on someone else, please, to ensure your continued access to this program, go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And never to fear, this webcast is Y2K compliant. And don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. Greetings, Carl. How are you?
Good to be back. I'm doing okay. I want to go to sunny Florida. I want to go to where that beautiful spa was that you just showed.
Carl, as you will see in the upcoming commercial, you probably won't have to come down here to Florida to go there within the next, I don't know, couple of weeks. Who knows? You might actually have to drive north to see some of these places from where you live in Canada. You wave to Santa Claus every morning, don't you, when you wake up?
I kind of felt like that this morning. It was minus 30 with not much of a wind, thank goodness, but it was a little bit nippy.
I was glad that we were up from our low yesterday. It was like 40.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this morning when I got up, it was minus 11, so it's not quite minus
No,
30.
are we
but it was-
talking? Are we talking wind chill factor
No,
feel
talking
No.
minus 11 actual, yeah.
on the mercury?
On
Yeah,
the Mercury. In fact,
Mhm.
tomorrow is supposed to be minus 15 here in the great
Oh, you
Chicago.
better. Yeah, you probably were advised to not even go out of your house, weren't you?
Yeah, well, we live in the People's Republic of Illinois, so they try to keep us trapped inside anyway. So.
Yeah. Sometimes the weather helps them.
so, so, yeah, I was just in Ron's neighborhood, actually his actual neighborhood, even
Yes.
Florida. I was down in Fort Myers and Cape Coral and stayed with my friends on Pine Island, and we had a great time at the Founders Conference with Al.
Tom Esco.
Yeah, Tom Askell, thank you, and a host of others, and we were the one apologetics ministry there, and we had our book on the Enneagram, so it was pretty good time. And now I'm back.
One is the loneliest number.
Yeah. So we have you on today to talk about convergence, government, religion, and money, and all of that spells Davos. Well, kind of. At least it points in that direction. And we had done something last year about this time, dialing for dollars in Davos.
I love it.
Yeah.
What are we calling it today?
Well, today we're just calling it convergence, government, religion, and money, but it's dialing for dollars in Davos Part 2, where they want to make sure that they're taking next advancements in one world government, one world economic coin of exchange. Make sure that we all bow down and worship at the altar of a global warming. I
It
got my
still
tongue wrapped around my eye tooth and I couldn't
it
see what I
still
was
works.
saying.
Sounds. Yeah,
So-
it's a global. Yeah.
So with that, oh, and by the way, the opinions here should be yours. That's true. And our other thing where it says we take no responsibility for others' offense. I think we don't really care if they get offended, frankly. So over to Carl, our friend Carl in the deep cold upper north, where they don't want you to leave the nation even. How did you happen to travel to dial in for dollars in Davos and not leave the nation? How does that work?
Thank goodness for virtual events, right? So this year it became the World Economic Forum's open forum. The Davos Agenda Forum was once again a virtual event. And they had anticipated it being in person, but had received too many death threats. Had too many. There was too much pushback, and so there was a certain level of fear. Even though the place, when they do meet in person, is well secured, probably one of the most secure places you can imagine, as you have heads of state coming from everywhere.
Now we have a policy against death threats, don't we, Don?
Yeah, we do. We don't encourage death threats.
No, okay. I just want to make sure.
You don't have a commercial about that?
No. In fact, we do frowns and we do stiff warnings.
That might be the only commercial we actually cancel before even considering it. Yeah,
it's a good idea.
Yeah,
really good idea. Yes. So, anyways, that was the reason behind why this year they did it as a virtual event again, and so it was. I mean.
But just to be clear, it wasn't
you raised a rabbit trail though, unwittingly. You walked into this full face without realizing.
It wasn't a virtuous event. It was a virtuous.
No, it wasn't virtuous.
No, okay.
Yeah.
Not virtuous.
Why are they receiving death threats? I mean, aren't they just trying to work out for the good of the whole entire planet together?
Well, of course, it's about the greater good, right? It's about making sure that you don't own anything and you'll be happy in your pleasant state of collective goodness.
And they're glad to make that sacrifice for us.
That exactly right. They will make that sacrifice for us.
Yeah.
Actually, Ron, we're making the sacrifice for them.
Right, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yes.
How foolish. Yeah, because they still need their jets and their carbon producing things, which I totally understand why they need those things to get around. But we don't apparently need to get around. So, okay.
No, and yeah. Speaking of getting around, this is a bit of a rabbit trail again, but 2 points of 2 points that are kind of interesting. Number one, the border issue. Yes, yeah, Don. Yeah, that sucks. The inability to travel back and forth, and the restrictions are there for those who, like myself, who are the unclean.
Unwashed masses.
That's right. The unwashed masses. I like that, Ron. Yes, on your side, there are strict rules that say that we cannot enter. And on my side, there are strict rules that say we cannot come back unless we follow all kinds of protocols and procedures. And good luck. And even why are you there to begin with? You should be at home, right? And then on the other point of travel, as we speak, we've got people demonstrating their non-allegiance to carbon, and we have convoys rolling across Canada. Massive convoys, Guinness breaking convoys.
You got a great big convoy.
Yep,
Man, it's a beautiful sight.
And they're moving on.
Is Rubber Ducky one of the trucks in there?
and they're all moving towards Ottawa. And at this point, it's hard to gauge how many trucks are actually on the road. But a few days ago, because you can register, guys are registering their trucks and going. 50,000 rigs are on the road.
Wow!
They're expecting potentially 500,000 people to converge on in Ottawa in the next few days.
And it's a vacation, or what are they doing?
No, it's basically it's a massive nationwide protest as truckers are saying enough is enough. And it doesn't matter vaxxed or unvaxxed. They're all engaged saying enough is enough. Of course, there are some truckers who aren't involved, and the Canadian Trucking Alliance is saying we don't support this, but you find out a lot of Canadian truckers don't support the Canadian Trucking Alliance, so who cares?
Yeah.
But I mean, okay, Davos, this idea that everything needs to be managed, this is in a small sense a type of a pushback against that mindset.
In all fairness, they wouldn't need to manage it if it would only do it their way.
Of course.
I mean, the only. I mean, come on, we pushed them into this, didn't we? You know, we have to. If we didn't do it their way, they wouldn't need to do this. Okay. So
if we just kept following the China agenda,
we thought we could. We are foolish enough to think we should have input into this. They're much smarter than we are. Let's face it.
Well, they have the vision of the anointed.
Yeah, the vision of the anointed.
We have our foolish.
That's be a good book title, wouldn't it?
It is. And you can't take it. Thomas Sowell's got it.
That's right. Yes. And it's a great book, by the way. So.
It is. And Thomas Sowell was bang on. He was right about that.
Absolutely.
That the vision of the anointed, those who see themselves as guardians, as the shapers, as the movers of culture, politics, economics, and let's be honest, religion. They view themselves as having that vision of the anointed. They are anointed by their own right, by their own power, by their own position and prestige. And of course, it's also a circle of self-congratulations. You see that in spades. And so they're able then to put forward that front to say that we have a plan.
They need. I mean, totalitarians need affirmation too. Okay, let's make sure we're not. Okay, just had to say that. Go
ahead. Because it was snarky and it was fun to say.
Well, go ahead. Sorry, Don.
Who are the players? I mean, this is not like just a little neighborhood get together. There's some fairly well-known world leaders engaged in this convocation of the elite. Who are they?
Oh, fairly well-known world leaders. Wow, that's almost an understatement. Okay. I mean, in terms of the World Economic Forum in its broad sense, you have dozens and dozens of heads of state. All right, your own head of state, your own Mr. Biden has had, such as he is, yes, has had a great affinity for the World Economic Forum and has had a lot of interplay with Klaus Schwab's and the World Economic Forum ecosystem. And it's an ecosystem, it's an ecology, a network. My prime minister, even though he himself has been a speaker at the World Economic Forum, in my country, Canada, the real powerhouse in terms of our national politics and its connection to the World Economic Forum is Christina Freeland, who is our deputy prime minister and our minister of finances. And she's on the steering committee. She's on the board of the World Economic Forum. At this particular Davos agenda that happened last week, where you saw the event going virtual, the opening act, the opening presentation was from the president of China, where we had Xi Jinping, who came and gave us the opening remarks to set the tone. And Xi Jinping talked about how we're all having to weather this global storm together, but we can't see ourselves as individual ships
Right.
on the sea of the world. We have to see ourselves as being on one big ship.
And that's why they don't have to make a sacrifice here, because we're all on the same ship. That's why they
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, okay.
Yeah, and so I mean, in terms of heads of state, you have everybody and everything from the prime minister of England to prime minister of Israel was one of the speakers. You have the head of state for France who's been involved. Macron has been involved. My goodness, we had the new elected head of state for Germany. So a lot of head of state, absolutely, a lot of government officials at the Davos agenda last week. John Kerry was one of the emissaries. He was one of the speakers dealing on climate change as the representative government official from, of course, Washington, D.C., speaking on behalf of the Biden administration as he is the...
And where was this held again?
This is, again, a virtual event.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
darn,
yeah,
he didn't get to
spend any but the headquarters is in Switzerland, right?
Yes, it is.
I was kind of hoping he'd be out of the country, because every minute he's out of the country, I just feel better. So there's less damage he can do here.
But in terms of the power base, okay, you have the political side. And then you have the economic side, and it includes representatives, the CEOs of Blackwater, my goodness, the largest, most powerful financial institution, private institution that there is.
And a great Doobie Brothers song, I just want you to know.
MasterCard, Visa, Bank of America, the Bank of America CEO gave a presentation. So you got a lot of vested financial interests. The governors of central banks have been members and speakers. Mark Carney, who was the former governor of the Bank of Canada, then governor, I believe he's one of the board members of the Bank for International Settlements before he became the governor of the Bank of England. He's on the board of the World Economic Forum. So we're not talking about just a fly-by-night group of college kids who maybe have some left-leaning ideas sitting around, having a latte, talking about how they would run the world if they could run the world. No, we're talking about people who have serious clout.
Yeah,
who are running the world.
You know so much about this; it's scary. The scary part is will Men in Black show up at your house tonight, and we'll never hear from you, or they'll replace you with one of the pod people or something. Who and
with MasterCard and COVID involved together, you've gone from "Don't leave home without it" to "Don't leave home."
I thought it was going to be like the Vatican Express card, "Don't leave Rome without it." But no, it's "Don't leave home." here's the COVID Express card,
Exactly. So, all right. So we have the world leaders who are currently, in fact, running the world into the ground, but running the world nonetheless, trying to figure out ways to do what?
Well,
I was going to say to remind us that it's their world. We just happen to live in it,
You might not be that far off, Ron. Kind of what it feels like sometimes, doesn't it? It's certainly to remind all of us, to remind other world leaders, to remind us people who just toil for a living, that our allegiance is primarily to the global community. and specifically our allegiance is to the earth. And this is where politics and economics, culture and social issues end up blending in with what is honestly a form of paganism. And that is this allegiance that we have to have towards saving the planet, that somehow we are the messiahs, we are the redeemers of planet Earth. And you really saw some of that language that came out during the COP26 conference, which happened to take place back in at the end of October, beginning of November in Glasgow, Scotland, where they had the big climate change event. If you would take the time to scour the headlines from the newspapers during those weeks, it was all about, we are the ones who are saving the planet. We've got to save the planet. We've got to save the earth. Can world leaders can we forge a path forward to save Mother Earth? I mean, we truly have a messianic complex.
Don't you sing that song at church? Everybody needs a savior. I mean, come on. They're stepping up. They're stepping up to the plate here to be that. So okay.
And I think that's a part that sometimes is missed, though, in this conversation, or the conversation around what does globalism really mean. The bottom line is it's an alternative salvation message. It is essentially religious. It's a cult.
It's great to have more than one savior too. We have John Kerry, Al Gore, China. Okay, you can't get much better than the government of China. They're going to save us. All the people at Davos, or virtually or unvirtuously, however it is. So, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But I mean, we can laugh at it. If we actually have to laugh at it, because the other alternative is to cry, because there's a tragic aspect to this.
We have two that have tuned in here. I'm going to display this because I can't tell what language it might be. So I just want to acknowledge that we have someone else tuning in. We're glad they're here amongst our other live participants. So
that looks Russian to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks Russian to me too. But I don't read Russian. I have trouble with English.
Oh, we have two Russians. This is scary, because of what's going on right now on the Ukrainian border. But go ahead. So,
sorry, Carl.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But I mean, these are the conversations that, of course, we're seeing happen at the world level, which is really conversations about how do we manage the planet, how do we manage everything for this, this collective vision that we have going on.
The collective. When you say we, the collective vision, who has going on? Let's clarify.
I know, exactly. As the leader from China said, common prosperity for the entire population, of course, whatever. And then he describes it this way: that we will first make the pie bigger and then divide it properly. So that's the mindset that you're seeing in place. How do you bring this though about? How do you bring about this idea of a great transformation? Is it just simply from abstract statements? Is it just simply the high sounding platitudes, the speeches? No, obviously not. It becomes more. It boils down to the world of policy, and specific to what's happening with the Davos Agenda. It becomes policy connected to technology, and the technology becomes connected to how to shape now and modify behavior for a specific goal. And so that's where things get really fun, is in the realm of policy and then technology.
It is interesting that they said make the pipe bigger and then divide the pipe, because I very rarely hear leftists talk about that part, making it bigger. They usually they usually treat all resources as extremely limited. They're with even talking. So I wouldn't be surprised if they would have a very narrow idea of what that means to make the pipe bigger.
I think you're right, Ron.
Yeah, but they still want to say it because it is rhetorically useful.
Yes.
And rhetoric is really important in China.
Absolutely.
Very important.
And it's important, to be honest, about if you're taking a look at international ideas like this, the language across the board is important. There's a certain amount of doublespeak for sure, but you realize very quickly how important not just simply the tone, but what the words are, the language that's being used. And you see this when my prime minister, your president, the president of the European Commission, central bankers, the CEO of MasterCard, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and all the other players, the thousands of CEO players within the World Economic Forum are all of a sudden saying the same thing. They're using the same language. They're
Or as those
talking the same
people, or as those people are referred to in the Book of Revelation, the kings of the earth. They're the ones running the show.
Yeah. And they're saying the same thing. They're using the same language. It's like, all right, we've got a common playbook. And the common person, the average person, I mean, we hear it. It's on a, it's in a newscast possibly, but for the most part, it's something we don't really even think about. But it demonstrates that there is a commonality, a common thought, a common theme.
Yeah.
So when we say convergence, because we have 4 issues that we kind of put out there for the title: convergence, government, religion, and money. When we say convergence, what does that mean from their perspective?
Public-private partnerships. Public-private partnerships at the international level, not the national or local level, not the county or city level, the international level. So it's a public-private partnership between government entities, between the international community, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum itself, other what would be considered in the realm of public governance, and then the private side being your international corporations, Visa, Bank of America, Google, Intel. By the way, they're all there. They're all part of it. And when I'm saying they're part of it, they actually are all, Google is part of it. Their CEO contributes. Intel contributes. They're all part of it.
So here, this leads me to a question of what does that really mean? Ron Hensel has been really helpful for me to understand the differences in communist ideas, let's say. Because we talk about, say, Marxism, he would say, well, that's a brand name of communism, or what fascism is like a brand name of communism. And so you had in Second World War Germany, it sounds like what you're describing, government business cooperation. So you're in partnership as a business. Schindler's List, which kind of shows that in film, where he's fundamentally in partnership with the German government at the time. Now, in the end, the government has total control over what you do, but there's this feeling of, we'll let you earn, get rich, do whatever, act like a capitalist, as long as it benefits our government for you to do that. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Kind of, except the idea that we often have with public-private partnerships is, okay, government contracts to build a bridge, you hire a private firm to build that bridge, and all that goes with it. We're not talking that level. We're not talking the level of building some infrastructure. We're talking about the level of a commonality around larger goals. So the public-private partnership in this respect is around climate change. It's around COVID issues that came out often, but specifically around green agendas. So the public-private partnership this way is more along the lines of how Mussolini saw it. That is, government and corporate private enterprises are all working for the same common good, not a common individual infrastructure project, but a broader common good, an allegiance to a higher public order, whatever that may be. Now, for Mussolini, it was a united Italy. Within the realm of the World Economic Forum, it's for a united planet. And we're all working towards those higher, broader, defined goals, and defined by the international community, the United Nations, the World Economic Forum, the IMF, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, all the alphabet soups that are out there.
So in order for that to really work, don't we really, Ron alluded to this earlier, don't we really ultimately have to become the pod people, that we have to be transformed to all also thinking the same exact thing that they tell us to think?
Yeah.
Okay.
And haven't we become that? I mean, that's a good point. Very good point, Don. Haven't we become that? I mean, if you, I mean, we within our Christian community, especially the Christian conservative community, we kind of have our own circles who we talk to, and we are of like mind. But then when you jump into the realm of what your neighbors think, or what your city councilors think, or what your school teachers are teaching, what the average person on the street thinks, you realize that they already are thinking more along those lines than what you maybe have anticipated.
Yeah, the original Stoics under a guy named Zeno basically believed in a one world government. Okay, and so this goes at least back to that ancient times, and of course we would say it goes back ultimately to the Tower of Babel. The impulse is never left. There have always been, and perhaps there always will be until the Lord returns. And when the Lord returns, we will have a one world government. You almost think that. I tend to think that it's built into us. But the problem is that now we're sinners. We can't have it. We have explanations in Genesis and in the book of Acts, of all places, when Paul talks about God established the boundaries of nations and one of the purposes of that, Paul says, is that men might seek him.
Right.
If we pool all our resources together and become a one world government, the implication here is we're going to look to ourselves for things we should look to God for. So that, in fact, that's what drives the impulse in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for those of us who are, less financially well-heeled, there is a possibility that we could benefit financially from this, especially if we invest in some of the better.
Yeah. You have to know when to seize the opportunity, though, right, Don? You have to know when.
Yes,
yeah.
True.
Yeah, you should know when to take the pineapple by the whatever you take it by. So there's Carl. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, when you see images like this, what do you think of? Vacation fun, relaxation, a time away with family. Well, here are two words you should be thinking: cha-ching, because any day now, maybe any minute now, the Arctic beaches of North America, Greenland, Northern Europe, and Asia will all look like this, making them the investment opportunity of a lifetime. Work will soon be starting on our new chain of Carbona Grande resorts and spas. Contact Oxgore Industries today for a free investment prospectus at 1-800-CLIMATE. So when the rest of the world looks like this, yours can look like this. Carbona Grande Resorts and Spas, the investment opportunity of the new climate world order. Yes, get in on that. I think it's, you can almost set your clock by this. I've reset my clock several times because of Al Gore, but each time I believed that it was going to happen. So.
Well, I'm not sure if this is the best investment strategy, because what happens when you see massive climate change and the North becoming, this beautiful haven? I think I just see clouds of mosquitoes. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, but
clouds.
Don, how many mosquito bites have you gotten down here in Southwest Florida?
I didn't get any, but I stayed inside all the time. Anyway,
no, we have wonderful mosquito control here. I have
well-trained mosquitoes besides.
Right. They you got to put them to work somehow. So, no, but we have I'm not kidding. I have seen fewer mosquitoes in my entire nearly 20 years here than I did in a single summer day in Chicago. So
Okay.
We'd sometimes joke here in Manitoba that we only have 2 seasons, 13 months of winter and 6 weeks of mosquitoes. So, but to the issue. Oh, sorry.
Elizabeth Ashby asked, do you think the elite worry about the lakes of fire? And the answer, in my opinion, is no. I don't even know if they believe in God.
No, exactly.
Any lake of fire they have is probably connected to a volcano that they wish would erupt right next door to conservatives.
They're not. Yeah. But you're right. They're not seeing it that way. They're not coming at it from that biblical worldview. And another really important point regarding investments, though, and this is really key to the World Economic Forum, and your slide actually is very pertinent, is the idea of reshaping economics and specifically investments to fit with global goals. So the World Economic Forum, along with the 4 largest accounting firms on the planet, have come up with a metrics. It's called the ESG, standing for Environment, Social, and Governance Metrics. And your companies, if you want to be a player, if you want access to markets, if you want potentially access to licensing, access to business contracts, at some point your company will have to comply with the ESG metrics, where your company will do internal audits. It goes from the abstract all the way right to the point of we're talking about auditors and bookkeepers, where your company now will have to demonstrate that they have a climate change mitigation policy.
I think I just heard about that in a podcast in the last week or so, and the person who's talking about it said they're already doing this.
They are already doing it. It has been, yes, Ron. It has been, yeah. Absolutely. In fact, this is why a conversation like this, I think, is important, because so often we as Christians talk about it as this is something happening over there, or maybe it's just abstract. Maybe it doesn't have a bite or reality to it. No, the ESG accounting metrics has been in play now for a few months, quite a few months, I believe, already well over 18 or maybe even 24 months already, as companies are starting to comply with environmental, social, and governance auditing mechanisms to demonstrate that they are good global players. And what's important about this is if you're not going to comply, then you will be, and I see one of your comments that popped up in the chat here, is deplatformed. Yes, you will be deplatformed. You will no longer have access to licensing or access to liquidity or access to market share.
It's more than just social media deplatforming. It's
bingo.
Economic platforming.
That's right.
So energy, of course, is all right now focused on carbon emissions, right? Pretty much. What is social? What would have to be checked? What would be checked in a social audit of a corporation?
Definitely your climate footprint, your carbon footprint.
So that's not under energy; it's under social.
No, it'd probably be under environment.
Or environment. So what's under social? What are they looking for there?
Social would be things like inclusion, pluralism. Do you have certain minorities or minority sectors on your board?
So if I live in Japan, how many minorities am I expected to have?
Well, it depends how many identify a certain way, I guess.
Japan is a country with one of the fewest minorities of any nation on earth.
Right.
I mean, how do you put 1/10 of 1% of a person on your board of directors to make sure you're adequately representing that minority?
Right. So, and you may not you might not be doing it through that route. It may be things like making sure your products, your advertisements, your services will now begin to cater towards certain lifestyles or certain social goals.
Well, now that we have, let me rephrase that. Not we. Now that our governments have completely marginalized women, what will happen when, let's say, I don't know, the board of MasterCard has to have a certain percentage of female representation, and they go, oh, we know how to fix this, and they just draw cards out of a hat to decide which of the men are going to identify as women?
Well, they just go, go to your transgender population.
Right. Then they just become part of the transgender population, and they increase their cred, so to speak, and they don't have to have any female representation.
Well, you just declare them females, and you've declared victory.
See, and there's always a kind of a workaround of sorts. Same with being green. Are you truly green?
It's hard being green.
Right, it really is, especially with Kermit.
Only with envy sometimes.
But you can participate and be green by investing in carbon credits or by investing within the carbon market, and all of a sudden now magically you become green.
It's your indulgence.
Right. It
It's
is your
your
indulgence
it's your indulgence, your
in a
indulgence
religion.
payment.
It is
Right.
religion.
Right.
So it seems that I recall certain stocks, those who do stock trading, advertise that they are climate friendly, green stocks, blah 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 blah, so that
Right.
okay, I can trust that this group is worried about global warming, so don't go into those non-green stocks. We need to punish them for not joining our club. Is that the
Essentially.
kind of thing we're talking about?
We're talking about that, and then we can take it one step further with the technology side. And this is something the World Economic Forum all last week acknowledged, that if we want to achieve green goals, technology is front and center. And so the technology will be sensors, monitoring, your economic decision making at a behavioral level, how that all is incorporated through technology to make sure that you indeed are a green player. And so technology is demonstrated to be the key to ensuring that we can now achieve these sustainable development goals and the climate change targets. The Prime Minister of Japan, who was one of the speakers at the World Economic Forum, was quite clear about that this is about behavioral change. This is about modifying personal consumption, personal behavior to fit
Mm-hmm.
green standards.
Well, I
Now,
mean, you had to. I mean, that's obvious, right? I mean,
Yes, it is.
he's stating what we could tell just by hearing about it.
Right. So you're looking at
Yeah,
what a social credit type of a system. That's what it
exactly.
seems.
It is.
doesn't China have exactly that? And what is a social credit type system for those who are unaware?
A system whereby, let's say, let's use it this way: loyalty points. For so many of us, you may have loyalty points at a supermarket. Well, this is loyalty points at the national level. You behave in a certain way, you purchase certain products, you show and demonstrate allegiance in a certain fashion, and you've got a score. And if you maybe you're part of a convoy going across Canada saying no to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Well, now your score all of a sudden is deleted by 10,000 points, and you're deeply in the negative, and maybe you should be cut off from driving.
So unless your carbon credit in the coffer clinks, your ESG score will sink.
Ah, I like that.
Yeah.
Ah, priest Gore.
What's that?
Yes. Yes, High Priest Gore.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes, confess your climate sins.
Which brings us to religion. How does religion factor into all of this?
Oh, that's interesting. There's a couple ways it can factor into this. Number one, I know we've done a number of shows in the past where we've brought up the Parliament of the World Religions. Perfect example where you see this interplay between global politics, global ideology, and global religion. And I know, Don, you've been to a few of them. Were either of you able to go to the virtual Parliament this last year, back in October?
I was not. I missed
Okay.
that one. I was traveling.
Really interesting. Again, what comes across as you listen to them is that their language is all the same. It's the same language, whether it's in the political realm or the religious realm or the economic realm. The language is the same. Back to Ron's very important point about the issue of language. They are saying the same thing. The religious leaders are espouting the same political rhetoric, the same ideological rhetoric. So there's that side of it where you see religious leaders coming on board, becoming essentially faith-based spokespeople for this larger global agenda. There's another less obvious side to it, and that is the understanding of how religion carries down into politics. And so from religion, you build philosophy, or religion speaks into philosophy. Philosophy speaks into culture and the arts. Culture speaks into politics. Politics, if it's not built on the proper foundation, becomes a faith in itself. And so they all end up becoming a form of priests in a type of priestcraft of the religious, philosophical, cultural, political cult of their own making, which is essentially, we can manage our way to salvation, build heaven on earth. That is what this is.
That's really important. We can manage our way to salvation and build heaven on earth. Yeah, that is interesting because there are those who are still pursuing eternal life, but not through any biblical frame of reference. That goes into another discussion we've had before
Right.
with AI, with transhumanism. Uh, those who are trying to, Rothblatt, for example, trying to uh, create a computer mechanism to transfer themselves into this computer and then live on forever digitally.
That's right. And you have some of the same kind of interactive players, or at least the corporations building some of the technologies that the transhumanist community looks to as this is the road to our techno theological salvation. What I'm seeing,
Right.
however, with the World Parliament, or pardon me, with the World Economic Forum specifically, is more along the lines of a techno green political paganism.
Ooh, I like that.
Techno
Techno
TG
green political
TGPP.
paganism.
Techno
Yes.
green. Yeah.
Wow. So money, the last one, money. How does money factor into all of this? Is it just the accumulation of it? Is it what?
No.
Is it something else? Is it more
Money is a tool.
nefarious than all of that? Pardon?
When the money becomes a tool, money is a measurement of time and resources and energy that is spent. Um, and there is a shift away from physical money, a shift away from having literal dollar bills in your hands, and we already see that. I mean, most money in circulation is not physical money; it is digital money. It is simply the exchange of ones and zeros between accounts. That is what most money is. Um, but then we still have physical money as well. There is a new press pressing forward to another form of money, and that is that we will be moving into some form of digital global forms of currency. And that was brought out at the World Economic Forum as well. We need the central banks, all for the most part, at least all the ones in the developing world, are looking at creating central bank digital currencies, recognizing that we can put this within the blockchain. And if we want to be honest about where all this ends up going, is technology, and blockchain is a form of technology. This becomes you kind of look at this as the ramp, the economic ramp, to ensure that we can now audit and monitor your behavior to make sure that it complies,
No,
economically
back
complies.
in the 70s, was right around 1980. F. Lee Bailey was giving a lecture, the lawyer, and he was asked what is the government's most powerful weapon in eliminating crime? And he said, just switch to they had the capability at that point to go completely cash free. Electronic currency was kind of feasible. The way he put it was a transition to a cash free society. Well, I was already in a cash free society at that point. So, but in any case, I'll give you a couple of minutes for that. But it was so he was particularly addressing, how do you catch these people? Well, you catch because they were so good at laundering money, but it was paper money. It's not quite as easy to launder digital money.
Right.
And governments and governments have all kinds of ways. Now, I think Bitcoin actually scares them because you can do anonymous transactions. So they've got to find a way to rope that in. But I think you're onto something. The way to rope it in is to imitate it, and offer your alternative and somehow make it sweeter. By the way, today Bitcoin is down 50% of its all-time high. But anyways, just thought you might be interested.
Well, everything stocks, investments have crashed. I've noticed over the last week and a half pretty dramatically. Yeah, and this is to me interesting because I have a friend who works for a very large multinational corporation, and he was in communication with somebody in China. And as they were talking, the one in China was shocked, I tell you, that we actually have physical money. He said, we don't use physical money here. Everything's on our phones. We do taps. We do whatever. Everything is digital pretty much in China. So he was surprised by that. But that is really what they're saying, because in China they can more easily control their people, give them their social credits or demerits, and that's a good way to monitor what you're doing. Does that mean you'll have to have a mark in order to buy or sell anything? Is it sounding like that?
It sure sounds like we could move that direction. All of a sudden, it sounds a little more plausible in some respects. I do want to make sure, though, that people recognize that none of this is without its hiccups. It's not like the international community is monolithic. It's not that they're always unified. I've seen that firsthand as I've gone to different global governance meetings, as arguments have broken out and the great ideas of unity and universal brotherhood becomes a shouting match, because there's agendas in play and egos on the line and budget lines to meet.
And people to persuade.
People to persuade.
And
Yes.
and sometimes I think some of the arguments are, I have a better, if we go with your way, we won't be able to persuade the masses as well as if we go with my way.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. Well, that's interesting. Even as you say that, I think of the 1993 Parliament to World Religions when they're kind of getting started on some of these things, and all peace and harmony. We're all one. We are the world one. And then a fist fight broke out in a main session between the Hindus and Buddhists, and everything went up for grabs. And the Wiccans are doing a circle dances, and others are chanting. And they had to bring the Chicago police in to shut the whole thing down. This is the Parliament of World Religions peaceful. This is just too funny.
I didn't know that the police actually got called in. I'd heard about this fist fight.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, so all peace and harmony is not always peaceful and harmonious, as we can tell. So this is maybe not to that extent, but they're not. You're right. They're saying, okay, well, I don't agree with your idea here, and so we're not going to do that, and that can get quite heated.
Yes, it can.
Especially if the one proposing the idea thinks they are the smartest person in the room, and if someone disagrees with that, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
So it's not without its hiccups. I'm not going to ask you to make predictions because our philosophy is borrowed from Walt Kaiser. I'm not a prophet. I'm not the son of a prophet. My father was a farmer, and I work for a nonprofit organization. So I'm not asking you for prophetic utterances on the when of it. But do you have a kind of a feel on how quickly they're trying to bring this all about?
Rapidly. They are trying to bring it about rapidly. There's no question about that. In fact, in terms of the technology side, the economic side, that move is happening really quickly. Will it roll out smoothly? No, I don't think it'll roll out smoothly at all. In fact, I think you're going to need more crisis to be able to leverage your solutions even more, if you want to put it that way. I think, though, maybe even the bigger question is, why is this important? Why is this important? Why even having a conversation like this important from a Christian point of view? And I think a big part of that, of the answer to that, is that we begin to see this not simply as politics, not simply as economics, but we see this as an alternative salvation plan. And then if we see it that way, then we can begin to understand that this is really a conflict. This is really the tension points between two opposing salvation claims. We have to ask the question, though, and do this with our friends when we have these conversations. Which path do you choose? Do you choose the path of collective man? Do you choose the path of creation redeeming itself or claiming to redeem itself? Or do you choose the path of Jesus Christ? Which is it?
Claiming to redeem himself. That is well put. I've been in discussion with someone who just finished reading George Yancey's book on progressives versus conservative evangelicalism. And it was interesting that one of his key points is conservatives like us take the scriptures as sola scriptura. Everything we need for life and faith and practice is in scripture. Progressives, their worldview is shaped by politics. So that sort of helps us understand why progressives tend to be more in this camp, because they're looking for creation to redeem itself as well, aren't they?
They are. For us as believers, our redemption is communicated through revelation. For progressive internationalists, redemption is communicated through revolution.
Ooh, revelation versus revolution. Those are two key differences.
Yes.
Revelation.
When we start seeing it down, at that level, then all of a sudden we realize how important this is, because we're seeing it for what it really is.
Yeah. Christianity transformed civilization over a 300-year period in the first 3 centuries of its existence and created what we now know as Western culture. Globalists have been at this for, as you document, 400 years at least, pretty effectively over the last 100 years. But the biggest strides, I think, are being made in around a 20 or 30-year period. Would you disagree with that?
No, I think you're right. It certainly has increased, especially since the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Yeah. So, I'm going to use a swear word here. So, for those who are really tender ears, just be prepared. Did the election of Donald Trump slow that down somewhat?
Uh-oh. I'm offended. I
don't care if you're offended. The reason I asked that is because he was really anti this stuff, and he infuriated world leaders around the planet because he was like not going to play that game.
Right.
So you don't think that slowed it down or impinged at all?
No. It may have sped it up in some respects, and this is why.
Ooh.
Because now you have a target. You have a concerted target that you can rally around.
Wow.
Yes.
And all can point their weapons at it simultaneously. That's
right.
An interesting idea.
We have a common enemy.
Right.
A common enemy. Wow. Or the guy with the orange hair. We hate him.
Yeah.
And part of our problem is in the conservative side is that we tend to erroneously uphold our so-called conservative leaders as well. In my country, Canada, to be conservative doesn't mean too much. As somehow, the ones who will save the day and slow this all down. I see it quite often to being the opposite case. That
isn't a conservative in Canada someone who just doesn't let his food touch on his plate. Can't mix the potatoes with the peas. That's my impression of a conservative.
We're a little more left in Canada, but then again, you've got Biden, so yeah, you just have an older Trudeau.
Is the word realm a 2-syllable word all across Canada, or is it just in Western Canada?
Oh my! Let's not go there. All right, so the problem is, and we're aware of this, and others are sort of aware of it, kind of. You actually address some of this in your book, Game of Gods, which we have in the description box. Go and buy it if you don't have it. Read it, because it'll be really helpful to understand a lot of these kinds of issues on a bigger scale. We're trying to talk specifically about Davos and the sort of how these things coalesce in this group, because that's really what's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will the parliament, or not the parliament, but will the UN factor into this in some way?
Absolutely. Yeah. The United Nations and the World Economic Forum have a very deep and long partnership. So the Secretary General of the United Nations was one of the keynote speakers for the first day of last week's Davos Agenda. But there is very much in lockstep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you and I are aware that the Parliament of World Religions is petitioning, I don't think they're successful yet, but petitioning the UN to be the religious ambassadors of the world for the UN.
Right.
And they have some quite colorful chaplaincy outfits. I should have showed that picture, but how effective do you think that will be? Do you think they will get that?
I don't know if they will or not. I know the Temple of Understanding back when it formed in the late 60s looked to itself to be maybe this Parliament of Religions that the United Nations would need, and then the United Religions Initiative, when that formed in the 1990s, late 1990s, the idea behind that was maybe that would become the United Nations of Religions. And now the Parliament of World Religions, which, since the 1993 Parliament, I think, has looked towards that end as well. I see the Parliament of World Religions probably having more success in birthing probably what would be that body, what that body would look like. I don't think it would be the Parliament itself, but the Parliament will probably help orchestrate or to birth what that new institution would look like, whatever that may be. Yeah. I've been to a couple of the sessions at the Parliament of World Religions talking about specifically this idea of creating a United Nations of religions.
Okay. All right. So everything kind of is moving and coalescing there. So just we're supposed to end right about now. Unless you have another interview to go to, I'm going to ask you hopefully just a 1 or 2 minute, here's what you need to think about, and here's what you can read question for Christians. How do you think about and prepare for and reach out to those around you in light of what's going on with this?
You use it as looking for opportunity. I hear the question, and I know you've all heard this question many, many times. How do we get to this point? What's the world coming to? Those are open door opportunities to have those conversations, to say, yeah, this is what's happening. This is what we're seeing already occurring. Let's now pull this back even further and take a look at some really important questions, which is why the importance for us is recognizing that this is ultimately still a question of redemption. Which salvation plan do you follow? I think that's really important. The other thing that's important is you can be a voice at the local level or whatever level God has put you in. If God has placed you in the realm of high finances and you have the ability to speak truth into this ESG community, awesome. Good for you. Powerful. That'd be fantastic. Please be a voice for truth wherever God has placed you. Period, whether it's in politics or business or within your own family. And certainly for us within the Christian community to watch what's happening in our own churches so our churches don't become gullible participants. Because, wow, we have a huge history of that.
Right. We do. That is so. As you know, I haven't done it, but I keep saying I need to write a book titled Gullible's Travels.
I like it. Looking forward to it.
So, all right. I am so glad if you could stay with us for a moment after we hang up on this.
Sure.
By the way, for those who are viewing, Carl will be back with us next week to talk about something that's also near and dear to his heart, Burning Man. So we'll be out in the desert on the horse with no name next week. Ron,
it felt good to be out of the rain, you know.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to be out of the rain. Ron, you want to walk us out of here gently?
Yeah, let's give credit to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Neil before me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Our culinary services are provided by Chef Hammond Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and The Opposer. Our Mormon Archives manager is Polly Gamas. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau Chief is Lucy Goosey. Transgender issues coverage is provided by Ben Hur. Our special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys, OD Humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yoleg Pulling. Technical assistance comes through Murphy Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howard. Grievance resolution director is Giovanna Pisami. Our director of privacy assurance is Wiretapping. And original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc., in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never be able to prove that in a court of law.
Never happened.
And notice the date at the bottom down. I finally changed it. I think I have a tradition of changing.
You got to take our ad off there.
How did that get on there? I didn't. Did I put it there? Oh,
you did. Okay.
I didn't do it intentionally. How is it here even?
Because you just did the ad. You just ran the ad. You forgot to take it off. So you were still talking.
Oh, we'll talk about
all right. Something. So for everybody else, we're going to talk about you after we hang up. Anyone we know, because we can. Ron, thank you. Hold on a second there, Carl. And everyone else, we're going to do our royal wave.